Jack Davidson's my name. You probably notice I'm the better looking one of the two. At least I think so. That's important, isn't it? Yeah. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our background. I'm a mechanical engineer, worked in the oil industry for about 30 odd years. Alan's trained in the UK as a nuclear physicist, and I got my degree in London, England. I'm from Belfast originally, so after I got my degree I went back to Belfast, and of course all the troubles and everything were on, and my dad says to me, you know, you need to get out of here. And so I went to the Canadian Embassy on a Monday morning, and on a Friday of the following week I was in Calgary. It happened that fast. I guess they wanted good-looking guys in Canada from Ireland. And especially ones that are full of baloney, right? You can tell I've kissed the blarney a little bit. So Alan and I have known each other for about 35, 40 years. And Alan worked in the oil industry as well. And I like telling stories because it sort of gives you an idea of how we formulated the product. So it was a January morning, it was 35 below, it was snowing in Calgary. I hadn't seen Alan for a couple of weeks. And I saw him across the street, and I was on my way to a meeting. And I sort of waved at him, and I said, Alan, you know, wait. Ran across the street when the lights changed, and when I got close to him, I could tell that his countenance looked odd. And I said, are you okay? You don't look well. And he says, I've just been diagnosed with cancer a couple of days ago. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's terrible. We stood and talked for a little bit. I didn't go to my meeting, and he and I went and had a coffee, and I think we must have spent most of the day talking about cancer. You'll probably only meet one nuclear physicist in your lifetime, and he's sitting at the back. There's not many of them. They're a unique breed. And so he was very research oriented, and I've been around supplements a little bit. I've run track and field for Ireland. I run 10,000 and 5,000 meters. I've run over 30 marathons. So I actually ran for Ireland at 10,000 meters, almost got into the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh, but just missed it by like a nose length. So we were around supplements in our training programs, but there was nothing like you see on the shelf now. There's nothing like Immunocare. These were single ingredients like fish oils, vitamin E, vitamin C, things like that. And so when I said to Ellen, you know, diagnosed with cancer, what does that mean? Chemo, radiation, get your prostate taken out, get your breast removed. And there's a time and a place for that, but sometimes there isn't. And sometimes it's good to combine natural medicines with mainstream medicines. In a lot of cases, the patients do much better. And probably 70% of our product gets sold to doctors. We sell it through a distributor in Seattle to doctors in the United States, and we sell it over in Europe. And we're just starting to move into Hong Kong with it. So most of our customers are doctors. So we spend a lot of time chatting to doctors about our product. And so when you hear them talking about their cancer patients, it's quite a journey. And if you know anyone or have a relative that has cancer, it's like a runaway train when you're first diagnosed, right? And that day that I met Alan, I could tell that he was anxious, stressed, didn't know what to do. The doctor wanted him in right away, chemo, radiation, a prostatectomy, have the prostate taken out. And as we look back now, we look north to our maker and we think, wow, he made the right choices early on, which was to do nothing. And that's not for everybody. Some people, yes, and some people no. But for Alan, when we look back 20 years later, we did the right things in not doing any mainstream intervention. Because now there's studies to show that when you get the prostate out, it metastasizes into other parts of the body. And so it's best to be left intact and treated that way. So after our long day discussing stuff, I said to him, you know, maybe there's supplements on the market that would help to help your immune system, because a lot of these diseases that we face, cancers, heart disease, for instance, autoimmune diseases, they're all diseases that affect the immune response. And when your immune system's not working properly, then you find that something's going to give. For Alan, it was prostate cancer. For me, it was severe allergies. I could hardly train for marathons in the summer months. I had runny nose, itchy eyes, achy joints. I felt like I had the flu from May till October because I had a severe allergic response to grasses and airborne allergens. And so since I started taking immunocare, I think after probably about a year of taking it, 1 capsule every day, my immune system's actually modulated, and I've never had an allergic response to any airborne allergen since that. And through the studies and research that we've done, we know that the immune system can be retrained back to the way it was. And it's called modulation or balancing. So doctors refer to it as a modulated immune response. It's kind of like, think of a teeter-totter. You know, you got a 100-pound kid on one end and a 50-pound kid on the other. The little teeter-totter goes out of balance. And that's, in a simplistic way, how the immune system responds. It just isn't in balance, and so something's got to give. And usually, it moves towards an over-responsive immune system, so it's constantly hyperactive. And you see things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's, irritable bowel, multiple sclerosis. These are all part of over 100 autoimmune type diseases, and they're becoming more common. A lot of the doctors that we meet tell us, especially the older ones, 25, 30 years ago, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, never heard of them. So they're becoming more common with people. Our hypothesis is it could be related to not getting enough plant sterols in the diet. And we're going to talk a little bit about plant sterols, how they're in the diet, how they're not in the diet anymore, and why you need to supplement with them. So plant sterols, anybody know what a plant sterol is, by chance? Do you know where you get them? Where are they found? Does anybody know? Sorry? They're found in plants, fruits, nuts, and seeds. And they used to be in abundance, but now because of modern processing of foods, there's hardly any left. And so it's important to get them into the diet because they do many different things. They're antimicrobial, they're antibacterial, they're anti-inflammatory, but above all, we love them because they're immune modulators. So if you're not getting enough in the diet, is this part of the reason why we're seeing so many people with these, what they call now, these strange, weird autoimmune type responses? And we think it's part of the answer. And we think that because people aren't getting enough in the diet. So how do you get them if you don't supplement? Well, basically you only get a few. The diet should give off somewhere between 300 and 400 milligrams per day of plant sterols. The average person now is only getting somewhere between 40 and 60 milligrams per day of plant sterols. And so they're just not getting enough of it. So we have 300 milligrams of plant sterols in each one of our immunocare capsules. Sample of them right here. And some people say, well, why do you have 300? We just didn't pull 300 out of the air. That 300 is what we have seen in somewhat suppressed research. And when we found it, we were quite astonished because there was products in the marketplace with 20 milligrams, 50 milligrams, 36 milligrams. Didn't make any sense to us. How come there's these studies saying that the diet should have 300 to 400 and companies are only putting small amounts? So we wanted to do it right. We wanted to put the optimum amount that you should get through your diet, 300 to 400 milligrams. So we chose 300 milligrams. So plant sterols, antimicrobial, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, which is a huge part of these diseases. I want to share a thought while we're talking a little bit about inflammation, because whether it's cardiovascular disease, cancers, autoimmune, when doctors take blood profiles of their patients and we tell them to look for C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, these are two nasty inflammation markers. So,
could you repeat that? I didn't hear any of it first.
Oh, really? Sorry. So there's two nasty inflammation markers, interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein. Interleukin-6 is one that doctors are becoming more familiar with, but they're very reluctant to test patients for it, but they will test for the C-reactive protein. So my wife and I had booked a trip to Mexico January the 3rd. On December the 30th, I literally woke up with a rash on my chest that started the size of my hand right here. It was beet red, it was itchy, it was like little pustules, like little pimples. By the next morning, it had spread from my neck to my feet, everywhere, all covered completely in it. So I had to go to Emerge. The first thing the doctor says, well, this looks like an allergic reaction to a drug. Well, I don't take drugs. I don't take aspirins. I'm on no medications. I said, it's definitely not a drug interaction. And then they said, well, we really don't know what it is. So it just gets worse and worse. This becomes now, my body looks like one big sheet of red. The little pustules have joined into just one big red sheet. And it felt to me like I was dipped in boiling water. I couldn't calm the heat down. So I went back to Emerge. They didn't know what to do with me. They were ready to put me in the burns unit up at the Foothills Hospital to try and control the heat. So I was getting a little concerned because sometimes leukemia can show up like this. And so I was getting a little concerned. However, I went through all the tests and they were all normal. They did biopsies. But here's something that's really important. They didn't even want me taking any supplements in case my body had built up some sort of a reaction. And I found that very hard to believe. Immunocare, we did a double-blind placebo study at the University of Guelph with it a number of years ago. We were looking for immune parameters. What does it do? How does it affect the immune system? And what does it do for inflammation, like C-reactive protein and interleukin-6? And it was really astounding to us. It dropped the C-reactive protein and the IL-6 very quickly. So my blood work comes back. Your CRP is supposed to be roughly around 1. If it gets to 2, starting to get a little on the high side. Mine was 35 within just 48 hours. It just went through the roof. So the usual medications, antihistamines, because they thought it was an allergic response. I didn't think it was. I was tending more towards a virus infection. And they gave me prednisone, which, okay, I was willing to take it for a week or two, but after that, it's a nasty drug. So I was on it for a couple of days and I decided to get off of it. And I thought, look, all the studies we've done on our product on reducing inflammation, why would I take prednisone and not take our own product? So I went for it in a big way. I started to take 12 a day. And I went back 5 days later, got another blood draw, and the dermatologist called me 2 days later. She says, what are you doing? Your CRP's gone from 35 to 1.7, like in 4 days. So it really reduced inflammation. And so just to repeat, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's, irritable bowel, MS, the list is huge. And if you take blood samples of these patients, CRP is usually through the roof. And it's one of the big issues. So don't be afraid to ask your doctor, test my CRP. They won't do it automatically. Ask them to do it. And if you want to be real brave, ask them to...
Is it highly sensitive CRP or only CRP?
Pardon me?
Whether to test CRP or HSCRP?
C-reactive protein.
No, there is a difference between highly sensitive CRP.
Highly sensitive,
CRP.
yes. There's 2 types, yes.
Yeah.
It's highly sensitive,
We
yeah.
need to test HSCRP?
Sorry?
Do we need to test HS, highly sensitive CRP or just general CRP?
I got the highly sensitive CRP because it was such a quick response.
Oh.
Like the inflammation went up so fast, like literally overnight. But it came down in about 5 days to 1.7, which was getting on the normal side. So that was interesting. So the immune system can work in some amazing ways. It can control how we respond to different allergens. And yet when it's being bombarded for some reason, it's the first thing to drop off. And now you start to see all these problems with it. So we're real big proponents of trying to do everything you can. And it means not just taking supplements, right? A good diet. And you don't have to live like a monk, but have a reasonable diet, drink lots of water, get good sleep. Exercise is huge. Huge part of staying healthy. And the patients, especially in the cancer clinics, patients that exercise survive and have a better chance of survival. And that was one of the first things that Alan and I decided to do. I said, Alan, I've been around athletics, I run every day, whether it's 40 above or 40 below. First thing that goes in my suitcase if I'm traveling, running shorts and shoes. And so I said to Alan, you need to start running. And we started to see some interesting research as well, where people with cancer, for instance, because we were talking about him, it's important that you exercise. And at this point, we hadn't developed this. We were just looking for something that he could do that would make him feel better. So we started to get involved in different types of supplements, looking for things that would support the immune system. And one day, Alan decided to subscribe to the British Journal of Urology. The first edition came, and he saw this article that talked about plant sterols and how it can help men with BPH. And BPH, if you don't know, is where a man can't start the urinary flow easily or can't stop it. So it's kind of like a leaky faucet, drip, drip, drip. And that happens when the prostate capsule swells. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's cancer. It could be prostatitis, which is infection in the prostate. But it swells up and closes off the urethra, so you can't go to the bathroom very easily. Or if you do get going, you can't stop it easily. And so plant sterols were shown to help men with BPH. And so Alan thought, and plants have what's called an innate immune response. And so the plant just stops the production of plant sterols and gives out very, very little. So if I was to open a capsule and give you a little bit of the plant sterol, put it on your tongue, it's kind of bitter. So in the plant world, the more bitter the plant, the less bugs attack it. And so plants produce these bitter tastes like lemons, limes, things like that, right? It protects the plant from insect attacks, fungus attacks, and so it's really interesting. So now we find that, okay, plants aren't producing enough, people aren't getting enough in their diet. When the researchers go into an organic region of Mexico, they find that the people are getting 400 or 500 milligrams a day of plant sterols. And the incidences of cancers, autoimmune diseases is way much lower, much, much lower than the North American population. So really, really interesting. This lady had a question?
I'm curious with the bovine colostrum, would that be an issue with hormone-driven conditions like breast cancer?
No, the only thing with bovine colostrum, and it's really good with allergic reactions. It's very, very helpful. We put 10 milligrams in each capsule, so it's not a lot of it, but because it's enteric coated, it actually makes it a little bit more potent because it's not getting destroyed in the stomach. It goes through, opens up in the lower bowel in about, actually we timed it, it opens up in about 4.2 minutes. So it opens up very quickly. Some people have an issue with bovine colostrum because they're maybe vegan and they don't like taking dairy. However, I don't know, there's a group in India called the Rishi, and they've been practicing, they're known to be the world's leading vegan group for the last 3,000 years, and they eat colostrum every day, and they don't consider it a milk because it's the first fluid that comes out of a calf. So for the first 6 hours, the colostrum is collected. After that, the cow starts to develop milk, but molecularly, chemically, it's different to milk, and really, really good for you, especially if you have airborne allergens, and that's why we put a little bit into the product. Just watching my time, yeah?
Is there anyone or any sort of condition that you would not recommend this for? Any age or stage of life?
The only caution we have is anybody with an organ transplant shouldn't take it. Those patients are usually on immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of their life. Some people are on 3, but for sure, everybody that's had an organ transplant will be on at least 1 anti-rejection drug, right? So those drugs suppress the immune system, whereas this modulates, so could be an issue. So we always say anybody with an organ transplant should not take the product. Good questions. We usually say no, just to be safe. We found no studies with on pregnant women or women shortly after. However, my daughter's a nurse over at the Rocky View, and she was working in postpartum for a while, so newborn babies. And apparently there's a couple of women that, babies now are being born with severe allergies and asthma and skin eczema. I mean, they're only out of the womb, the steam's still coming off them. And they're showing up with these allergic reactions. So a couple of moms took the product, and we noticed that the eczema and all started to disappear like in about 48 hours. So there could be a transfer through mom's milk. So we usually say, to be safe, I'd probably wait for a couple of months till the baby's a couple of months old. We've asked doctors about this, at what stage should you start using it with small children. They generally will tell us 6 months, and then you can start using it. You could break it open, put a little bit of it into applesauce and give it to them that way. I'd probably do about 1/3 of a capsule. Any other thoughts, questions?
Is this monitoring line similar to like pine bark? Is that
Yes.
California?
Yes, yes. That's the proanthocyanidins. Yeah.
California.
Yes, those are the antioxidants. We get them out of the pine.
And all the colostrum that you source that from India?
So where, sorry?
From India?
No, the colostrum is New Zealand based. It's one of the cleanest in the world.
So when you talked about the immune suppressant for the organ transplant, for someone who's taking, say, Stelara for psoriasis, it's also an immune suppressant, right? Can someone who's taking a Lymex, they should every 4 months injection be able to take the immunotherapy?
That's a difficult question for us to answer. You probably would have to ask your doctor. And of course, if you take that into him, he's going to go, what the heck is that? You know, most of them say they don't know what a plant sterol is. Some don't even know what an antioxidant is, unfortunately, but yeah.
Skin specialist might be able to.
Just generally speaking, most people can take it. Even we consult with some pharmacists, and the only drugs where there could be an issue is warfarin and Coumadin, blood thinners, especially warfarin. It's a nasty drug. It's very sensitive to different things, and so we would probably caution someone if they're taking warfarin not to take this.
Did you say blood thinner? Is it on blood thinner?
Yeah, like warfarin. Warfarin or Coumadin.
No, it's one of the others.
One of the other ones generally know it. It's just the warfarin and the Coumadin that could have issues. I know somebody who's on warfarin. He can't even eat vegetables. It reacts with it, especially anything with vitamin K in it, like cabbage, kale, things like that. So it's a very sensitive drug. I'm going to turn the time. Sorry, go ahead.
Just if you do have an issue, like how long do you have to stay on it, the product? Like, is it like...
For the rest of your life. No, I'm only joking. No, I'm only teasing. It's a good question. We found a lot of people when they've been on it for a while meaning a year, we found that the feedback was really positive. That, the only way to test that is to stop it. Some people have said they've stopped it and their symptoms have come back. And some have said they stopped it and symptoms didn't come back. I'm a good case. Allergies, like severe allergies, I can sniff ragweed and everything now and it doesn't bother me.
And so you take one a day?
I just take one a day, and I've been taking one a day for 15 years. Yeah.
Can you stock them with other vitamins like grapeseed extract or?
Yeah, there's no problem with it. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. We like to say take it on an empty stomach. So first thing in the morning is the best one. If you're doing one, if you're doing two, then maybe take the other one in the evening. Just before food, wait 20 minutes, drink it down with a glass of water. You're good to go. So it's easy to take. I travel with it all the time. If you're in planes and stuff, there's always somebody sitting beside you that's sneezing. So as soon as I get on a plane, I'll take a couple of them, and maybe a couple getting off, and helps to keep the colds and flus away. So I'm going to pass the time over to Alan. He's going to talk a little bit about how we developed this, and maybe he'll talk a little bit about cancer, and hopefully that's of interest as well.
Okay. If I suddenly start to fade, just sort of wave your hands and I'll put it on. But I noticed sitting at the back myself that the sound was rather muffled, and I had some difficulty in hearing it. But I am slightly deaf, so that's the situation. Anyway, what I would like to do is to sort of move back a bit, because sitting there made me think about how all this started. And really, it's a very good example of how things can come back to you. And what happened was that one morning at breakfast on the radio, I heard a call for male volunteers to look after palliative care patients while the primary caregiver got some relaxation. And for some reason or other, I remembered the number and rang it, and ended up as a palliative care volunteer with a man with prostate cancer. So, helping him on his journey, I learned quite a lot about prostate cancer and what it can do to you, and just as important, what the cures can do to you. Basically, you become incontinent, and the radiation can damage other parts of your body because of the closeness of the various organs. And it really isn't very good. At this time, I was a typical physicist. Anybody in the natural products industry was a load of crystal swingers. I just had no connection with them at all. I was right at the other end of the pole. But having seen this, and I remember this patient saying to me, he wished he had explored other alternatives. And I thought, well, this is something I need to do, is to explore the alternatives. And I sat down and did a lot of reading and a lot of thinking, and eventually I had an inspiration. You know the definition of inspiration? A blinding flash of the obvious. we come with a very well-designed immune system to deal with systems like this. So the first order of business seemed to me to look at our own immune system and see what you could do to help it operate at its optimum. And that's basically what we did. What we have produced is really a very unique product. First of all, it's a steroidal alcohol. Now, that's not a very good marketing term, but that's the chemical term for the molecular structure. And you have within you a number of other steroidal alcohols. Testosterone, estrogen, aldosterone, cholesterol. They're all natural products produced by your body and of a similar molecular structure to the product that we have produced. So the body recognizes it, and it has a standard operating procedure for processing it. You know, it doesn't have to say, what the hell is this, and make something up. It's very easily processed. Secondly, we recognize that a lot of products are destroyed by the stomach acids, particularly if they're alcohols, and this is an alcohol. So in order to get it through the stomach acids, it had to be enteric coated. And I think we were one of the very few people in the industry who actually enteric coat a natural product. I think you'll have to look a long way to find anybody else who does this. So that's another unique aspect about the product. Now, we were talking about cancer. There is some work done by a guy called Awad, who has shown that the beta-cytosterol, which is the key ingredient within our product, can inhibit the growth and cut back on the lifespan of breast, colon, and prostate cancers. Now, I'll repeat that again. It will reduce the growth and cut back on the lifespan. That is not a cure, but you're stacking the odds in your favor. And I think if you're in this position of dealing with the cancer situation, it's not just supplements. You have to look at diet and you have to look at exercise. The body needs exercise, and it produces all sorts of chemicals within itself if you take the exercise, and you don't get the benefits if you don't take the exercise. So one of the first things to do is to get yourself into an exercise program that's right for you. You don't start running 5 or 8 miles every day. And in fact, myself, I started with sort of trotting for 20 steps and walking for 20 steps. Trotting for 30 steps, walking, and build up until Jack and I ran the Victoria 8K, wasn't it? Yeah, the Victoria 8K. It was a battle. But you know what? It helps you to develop the determination. Gonna do it. And you do it, you know. Then you think, good heavens, did I actually do it? No. So those are the main points that well, in a sense, the main points. But are there any people here who are either for themselves or because of close friends interested in dealing with cancer? Okay, well, there's a number of you, so I hope the rest of you will bear with me when I veer off a bit here. One of the things which I think is very important is to change the cancer diagnosis from a battle into a journey. And you can ask yourself, what can I learn from this situation? And try and use this situation to your advantage in terms of learning. Now you have to do a lot of thinking about that, but it can be very, very rewarding. And in fact, I've been on this journey now for 25, 26 years. And it's a question of ducking and dodging. You know, the cancer itself can transform from feeding on cholesterol to feeding on I'm sorry, I lost the word. Anyway, it can change its behavior. So in a way, you have to try and stay a jump ahead. But in this context, I think it's very important to try and utilize the mind-body relationship. And what I have done is develop a set of sort of 10 guidelines which I think can help people travel on a journey instead of fighting a battle. If you're fighting a battle, you're wasting a lot of energy. But if you're traveling on a journey, you're using the situation productively to help to learn and also help other people too, because you're in that journey, and it's amazing how you can tell when somebody's talking, have they been through this? Do they know the turmoil? How hard it is sometimes to keep on a particular direction. It's not an easy. It's not a journey for sissies, it really isn't. Anyway, let me deal briefly with the 10 points, which I personally think are very important. First of all, if you get a cancer diagnosis, treat it as an uninvited intruder. Do not let it become the focus of your life. It's an uninvited intruder. Now, whether you have a business, you go to work, or you learn an instrument, or you write a book, have some other interest than cancer. Very important. First thing is to develop another interest. I never planned on being in the supplement business. I really didn't. But it happened to me as a result of volunteering. Amazingly enough, it's amazing how these things, one thing can lead to another. Remember, your body is your friend. That's the second point. First point is, don't let cancer become the focus of your life. It's an uninvited intruder. The second is, remember, your body is your friend. It enables you to walk, to talk, to see, to hear. You know, it's amazing. These here are taking tiny vibrations and pulsations in the air and transfer them into sound, so you can hear what I'm saying. It's amazing when you think about it. Just those tiny vibrations, thousands of vibrations a second, it's sensitizing those and transferring it into sound. But what's even more important, or more impressive, I think, for your eyes, they're taking electromagnetic radiation and transferring it into vision. And not only are they transferring it into vision, they're giving it to you in colour. No, what more do you want? The body really is absolutely amazing. And if you look at it as your friend and realise how amazing it is, it's amazing the sort of quietness it can bring, the peace that it can bring. The third thing is exercise. Now, as I say, I could talk on there, and Jack used to run 5 to 8 miles a day in terms of exercise. He's somewhat older than he looked, actually. The body needs exercise. Try to choose something that you like. The more you like it, the more you are likely to stick with it. As I say, I chose running. The fourth point is diet. Plenty of dark green vegetables, cabbage, broccoli, which contain indole carbonyl 3, and plenty of dark-skinned fruits. Can you remember the product, Jack, that dark-skinned fruits have? Psychostilbene, pterostilbene in them, which can be quite an effective anti-cancer product. Avoid sugar, corn syrup, and carbohydrates, for sure. Now, I talked a bit earlier about being transposing, I think is a better word, transposing a cancer battle into a journey. And it helps if you can look at things not in just an earthly, worldly way, which is a finite time, but in an eternal context. And ask yourself, why am I here? What is it I have to learn? And I think, for me, the answer to that is compassion and kindness. And as a physicist, I had rather a cold, analytical mind. But now, I sense warmth more easily. And I find that I relate more easily. But I also get upset more easily. So, you know, it's not an easy path, but it's a very rewarding one. Sometimes you get hurt in the process, but then you understand what it's like to be on the other side. And this has this is a real digression here. One of these days I'm going to give a planned speech and you'll all be bored to tears. There's an interesting question about what happens beyond. And there's been a very interesting book written by a guy called Kenneth Ring about life and death. What happened here was that one of Kenneth Ring is a professor of psychology at the University of Cincinnati. And he had one of his staff come to him who had undergone a cardiac operation, had died on the table, been resuscitated, and he found it difficult to incorporate the experience into his, quote, normal life. And Kenneth Ring was very interested in this, and he managed to contact 115 people who had been clinically dead in the operating theatre and been resuscitated. And he went through their experience, and their experience was very similar in outline, but different in detail, quite different in detail. But one of the things that was very interesting in it was the means of communication during that period. People found that they didn't communicate verbally, but they sort of intuited, connected by intuition. And it struck me that if, as you move on, you then have to communicate by intuition, I think it means in terms of yourself as a person, you must be free of anger and envy, which could be so corrosive in that sort of situation where you are connecting directly. And I think one of the things you have to learn in this lifetime is, as I say, compassion and kindness. So if you're emanating compassion and kindness, fine. But if you're filled with anger and envy, oh, no, that doesn't work. Not at all. Too corrosive. So this is really an opportunity to turn around your thinking and how you view things here. The other thing I strongly suggest is the book called Peace, Love and Healing by Bernie Siegel. It's a book which would be very helpful, I think, to read with your partner. A chapter at a time, and talk about a chapter at a time, because then it's no longer such a lonely journey for either of you, because it's also a journey for your partner as well as for you. And either they're left on the outside trying to handle a changing you, or you can travel together. And this book can help you travel together. It really is an excellent book. Bernie Siegel is actually a cancer surgeon in New York. And he had some of his patients come back that he never expected to see again. And he wrote his first book, and the name of it escapes me. But about 10 years later, when more of his patients had come back that he hadn't expected to see again, he gathered together the information on them and tried to find a sort of pattern, what was common amongst them. And I won't let the secrets out, I'll leave you to read that. That's Peace, Love and Healing by Bernie Siegel. It's okay, we're nearly there. Reflection. I think it's very important to learn to go within yourself and find that quiet time, that quiet place where you can just relax, and relax. I call it listening to the silence. You know, I don't know what it was like for you guys, but I was brought up in an ecclesiastical institution, and of course there we had certain formal acts we had to go through, and part of the prayers was, you know, oh Father, I have sinned, and now come the sins. Now, this is what I need you to do. And I found now, instead of that, it's more important to listen. To listen. In fact, I remember once when I was going through a difficult time, as saying, Father, when are you going to take my name? When are you going to learn to listen? There's your answer. When I want to go within, what I do is I drive out to Moraine Lake, cross the moraine, head through to Consolation Lakes, and cross the bottom of the lakes and wander along the bank there, and find a quiet spot where I can sit down and quietly, just be quiet. And I can listen to the breeze in the trees, the drone of an occasional insect, the smell of the pines, the sparkle of the sun on the lake. Just quiet. It's a very refreshing thing to do, and it's amazing the strength that it can give you. It really is. The next thing I would suggest, and we're at number 7 incidentally, is to try and find a good friend. No, not your wife, she has enough, or your husband enough. They have enough problems to deal with you. No, try and find a good friend. Somebody who can tell you well, first of all, know when to support you, and then know when to tell you to smarten up, and then go home. They don't have to bother with your reaction, just tell you to smarten up. But a good friend can be a tremendous help. It really can. Number 8. Remember, 2 of the most powerful medicines are love and laughter. Get all you can of both, and give all you can of both. Really is important. Love and laughter. If you remember nothing else of my talk tonight, remember love and laughter. And if you get the option to choose, go for it. Go for it. Number 9. Never let anyone tell you how long you have to live. It's not in their hands. It's in your hands. Remember that's important. Because I remember being told that if I didn't take a certain pharmaceutical, I was not going to be here next year. And I didn't want to take this pharmaceutical because of the side effects on it, and I for some reason or other, felt strongly against it. And it ended up with me having to go to a hypnotherapist to get some help out of this, because it was in danger of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. I couldn't get it out of my mind. So I went for help. So don't be afraid to go for help. And the last thing is live a day at a time. Remember, you are perfectly imperfect. You were designed that way. So don't be upset if you make some mistakes. Think about it this way. You screw up, it's an opportunity for somebody else to help you through it. Well, I think I've gone on a bit longer than I intended. I covered some ground which I didn't really intend to. Are there any questions? If they're difficult, I'll pass them to my colleague. Nothing? You guys, you have the gentleman at the back there.
Yes, sir. I'm very happy that you mentioned in this book that type 2 diabetes is autoimmune disease, right?
I'm sorry,
You mentioned over here that type 2 diabetes is autoimmune disease, right? Autoimmune. Type 2 diabetes.
Oh, sorry. Yes?
So it is autoimmune disease. So what is the difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes then?
Type 1's adult type 2's adult onset. Type 1.
Yeah, type 1 is
Sorry?
it is the autoimmune disease, right? Now you mentioned type 2 diabetes is also autoimmune disease.
Yes, Health Canada just reclassified it last
So
year.
then what is the difference between these two, type 1 and type 2?
Well, I think type 2 is adult onset, and you can deal with certain pharmaceuticals and maybe some supplements too. But type 1, I think you need injections.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because it is autoimmune, the pancreas, the cells, the beta cells of pancreas are destroyed by the autoimmune system. Then the person needs
I wonder if you
insulin.
My hearing isn't very good, sir, and I'm having difficulty picking up what you're saying. It's not what you're saying, it's just that my hearing isn't very good.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can address Jack over here. I think his hearing is a lot better than mine.
We can talk about it when
Yeah, because in type 1 diabetes, the doctor said it is autoimmune disease, right? The pancreas cannot produce insulin, right?
Yes.
So now you said that type 2 diabetes is also autoimmune disease.
It wasn't until about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Now what is the difference between these two, type 1 and type 2? Because in both cases, the pancreas cannot produce insulin.
Exactly.
So it is the same thing. Type 1
Type
and
2
type
is a
2.
little bit different. Like a lot of patients are on metformin to try and control it. Type 1's a whole different, more serious form of diabetes.
But both are autoimmune.
Both are now classed as autoimmune reactions. So it's the body attacking itself.
Well, it's interesting you should raise that, because we have had a number of cases where diabetics have been taking this for allergies and have found that their insulin requirements have dropped quite substantially, about 40 or 50%. But what that connection is, I don't know. I don't have the research on that. And we don't advertise it for that. But it can happen. Interestingly enough, there's also been a number of cases of children who are born what are they called, the children who don't get hair. Alopecia, that's correct. Yeah, and this has helped with that. And interestingly, I'm 84 and I'm still have a reasonable head of hair. And Jack over there, as you can see,
I'm 104.
You're 83?
And did you find that with adults at all that had the loss of hair? Were they able to, or just children?
well, I think that one of the reasons why I still have quite a bit of hair is immunity. Quite honestly, my dad was as bald as a coot.
As you get from your mother.
Possibly. It's not my area of
How many
expertise.
of these a day do you take?
One,
Just one?
unless I'm flying somewhere. Yeah. If I'm flying somewhere, then I take two.
So do you find that it helps if you're flying? Do you mean by anxiety, that you feel it relaxed?
I'm not worried about flying. I used to fly a tiger moth in the days of my youth. That's a long time away.
So when you said when you're flying, you take two?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that it's air circulating in the aircraft, it's changing beds, it's changing foods, you know, just changes that. And I find if I take a couple, that's fine. If I don't, then I very often end up with a cold.
Right.
Sorry,
I was wondering how many years you've been in remission.
I'm not in remission.
You're not in
No,
remission?
I'm not in remission, no. I'm on
From
one of
your
what they call the
diagnosis.
cancer warriors who have advanced cancer but are struggling on. You know, you live each day the best you can and do what you can. So, you know, when the end comes, you can say, yeah, I made a difference. Very importantly, I've copied off a dozen of these, and I'm going to leave them with Priya. So, if any of you have or have friends or feel that you are beneficial, either take one from here, or if these are gone, Priya has another one she can make some copies of. But I do recommend very, very strongly trying to transpose the battle into a journey. Remember that. If nothing else.
It was all good.
Sorry?
It was all good. What you said was all good.
Well, that's good. I mean, I've not said anything controversial. You must have misunderstood me.
Why is there caution if you have an allergy with cow's milk? Is that because of the colostrum?
Well, no, I didn't. Where's?
It's under cautions. If you have an allergy or hypersensitivity to cow's milk, don't use the product.
Oh, that's Health Canada. They, you know, sometimes they have some strange requirements, and it's easier to go along than argue with them. That's the bottom line to it.
I want to ask you if, you know, if I'm not there to scroll around, do you have a lot of information online?
Not on cancer, because there's people out there who'll take the last penny telling you they have a cure. And Health Canada, quite rightly, clamps down.
What about just the immune, you know, strengthening the
Or you can talk about immunity. You can talk about immunity. And we talk about it a bit on the website, but not as thoroughly as we do in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. we've tried to write this book in an easy-to-read fashion. And although, interestingly enough, we had a professor of biochemistry read this, and she said, that's really what she was going to say, and she said she was immensely impressed by the quality of the references. So I thought, well, I hope we read the book as well as the references. I'm sorry, sir. Yeah. Well, first of all, everybody's metabolism is different. But I go on one a day. I was at one time on 4 a day, 2 morning, 2 night. Sometimes I follow it just intuitively. I'm not answering your question very well, and I'm not sure there's a good answer to it because it depends on the patient. But generally, I think, and this brings me to mind, I need to review this. 2 a day, 1 morning and 1 night is probably good. You can sort of just slow the process down, but the end is inevitable. And basically for me, as long as I can live as long as my wife, that's fine. Once she goes, 2 weeks after, I want to go.
How long have you been married?
55 years.
God bless.
Doesn't seem long, actually. It doesn't seem long at all. No.
Means you've been having fun then.
I was very, very fortunate. What can I?
Is there any adverse effects if you do overtake them? Like if you take too many,
Well,
will you feel it?
we did some toxicology tests, and by the time the subject would have consumed 20 bottles, there still wasn't a death as a result of that. So, you know, you could try 20 bottles, but I think you'd be sick long before you got that lot down. So, I did not come across any situation where you were taking too much.
It just wouldn't
But
really
I think-
necessarily have more effect. It
No.
just would be kind of novel.
What I'm thinking, and this is what I think, that I don't have research-based evidence to prove this, but what I think is that with 1 a day, you get sort of 80% of the effectiveness. With 2 a day, you get 90. With 4 a day, you get 95. You went up to 6 a day, you probably get 96.
Yeah.
You know, so you're getting a diminishing return. So it's a question of what's right at the time. And this is intuitive, you know, what your body is telling you. This is something when you go up to Moraine Lake or Constellation Lakes and go quiet, your mind can wander over these things. And it gives you time to sort of just quietly think about these things.
So if you started taking it maybe for a day, for like a couple of months, and then you went down to 1 a day, does it stay in your system kind of thing?
Oh yes,
You're
yes.
trying to, has like a building up.
Cumulative.
Yeah, cumulative, yeah.
Well, I think it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it does. But one of the things we haven't mentioned, but should have done, is that the 2 important compounds that the body needs and that it can't manufacture itself. One is vitamin C, which is basically ascorbic acid, and the other is beta-cytosterol, which modulates the immune system. Your body does not produce it, but you need it. And in this world, as Jack was talking, the beta-cytosterol which you used to get is getting depleted by the production and processing methods. But at the same time, the radiation you guys are getting is increasing immensely. And in a personal way, when I was a teenager, you know, running like golf, and I was always something of a weed, but at least I'd try and get a bit of a suntan. And I guess if you lay out for 3.5 hours, you get the slightest touch of pink. Now try lying out for 3.5 hours. And the reason for this is, first of all, the depletion of the ozone layer. And secondly, the increase in the amount of radiation from cell phones, TV, these transponders which are radiating water meter readings, electricity readings from your house. That's all transmission. And if you want to get a real feel for that, just watch what happens to your photochromatic lenses when you walk out in an overcast day, and see how they darken. That's all ultraviolet radiation. And so, in this environment, you really need to support your immune system. You really do. Would you like to take over again, Jack?
No,
You don't have any last words to say?
just adding that lady was asking about dosage, and a lot of doctors do what's called a loading dose. So they like to do a little bit more dose when you first start the product. So 2 in the morning, 2 at night, and as symptoms start to decrease, then decrease the dose. Right? Why take 4 if one's going to work? But a lot of people need to go through a loading dose. And another interesting little tidbit, if you're dealing with like a pneumonia that you can't get rid of, or a virus like I had in December, they pulse the dose, which can be really effective. That means 1 today, 2 the next day, back to 1, up to 3. Because these viruses are now called smart virus, and they adapt to drugs and supplements, especially when you're doing the same dose every day. So if you change the dose around, it works a lot more effectively, especially for viral infection. Otherwise, thanks for coming out, everybody. Tonight we've got a free book if you purchase a bottle, where it's usually about $25, sold at chapters. So tonight we thought we'd offer a free book. Thanks for coming out.